what a compelling, interesting orchestration that you've created here, Giorgos. It's really wonderful. It's got a lot of spunk. It's got a lot of beautiful little touches, just little emphases here and there. Yeah, just really wonderfully done. Now, I still think there's a lot I can help you with here. That's my job. So let's start off with just a few discussions of some notation things. Okay, just a little bit of feedback on that. So, like right in here, you've got a B followed by a B, like a B grace note followed by a B principal note. Now here you have a B grace note tied to a B principal note, and they're both accented. So this is sort of a contradiction in terms. How can you tie a note that has an accent on both ends of it, right? So either you have an accent at the beginning and you are coming in slightly before the beat and you're tying it to this note, in which case this is the where the articulation is, the accent articulation is, or you are telling the player to play two accents in a row, dun dun, which would not need a tie, right? So here's the problem, and that is that if you look at the piano score, everybody, like if you can go look at the piano score, this B and this E are being played by the top part of the hand, right? So that is the reason why there is an accent at the beginning. Then there is a tie to E here and a B here, and then there is the B at the bottom of the player's hand. So what is Falla telling the player here? He's saying, I want you to accent the B and the E at the beginning as a grace note, and then I want your thumb to hit the B with an accent. And that is the reason why there is an accent sitting here. So you do not need the accent to be played twice, right? And the same thing I think you could sort of say here. But then you have to look at the other problem, Giorgos, and that is, do you really want to have a B tied to a B? Like, is it better, could you put in an E here instead and have the B slur down, like B, 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 right? And then can you find like a different note? Can you change this around so that you have grace notes on all of the pitches, but you just don't have a B leading to a B, right? I think that would just be much, much clearer, because the problem with having a tied grace note, having the same note come in, you're basically just telling the player to come in early, right? So if you really intend for these grace notes to be pretty much on the beat, then it's meaningless, right? Or if you mean it to come in slightly before the beat, then it throws everybody else off, because like, where's the downbeat now? Some players are playing the same note and like they're just playing one note and they're just coming in early. And then so where's the downbeat? Everybody because everybody is watching the conductor, and there's a sense of playing slightly ahead of the conductor's baton, right? So people have that. They might, you might just throw everybody off, right? So it's really just better to not have, in this situation, especially on the downbeat of the piece, not to have the same note as the grace note. Just pick a different way of doing this, right? Maybe you don't need a grace note on this at all, right? Or maybe, you could just figure out a different way so you still have this B as a grace note, but it is like maybe slurring down to G sharp, and then some other note is slurring up to B, and so on, right? Just switch everything around a little bit, but try not to have B slurring to B, right, as a grace note, or going da-dun, 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 dun, 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 dun. I mean, I guess you could do that without the slur. That would work too, but just don't have the tie. Sorry, tie, not slur. So that is really kind of the main gripe, right? Now there's some guidance I think I can give you on harp scoring, just like the proportions and the weight and everything else. But just in terms of all the other situations here and balance and so on, we'll just address those as we go, okay? So let's start off at the beginning here, like our very first concern in the evaluation criteria, pitch weight in the upper middle register of the piano score. You're starting off pretty much just scoring in the same register of the piano, except right in here you're throwing in this low B, which is kind of cool. That you're sort of doing you're making it into a like a 6/4 chord, right? So like you've got the dominant of the chord below, right? But that's okay. Now, like the next concern is, since in the piano score this section is almost identical to this section, avoiding scoring them identically in the orchestra, and you do that as well. You have two different approaches to scoring right in here. Now, it's kind of interesting to just discuss those two different ways of scoring things. So you have this bum 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 bum. Nicely done, nice and strong on the flutes up there, oboes. It's very cool how you throw in the clarinets right in there just for a little bit of emphasis with castanets trilling right in there, and just like boom with a tish on the clash cymbal. And then it's essentially the same thing is scored across the violas, with the violas and the violins, with the violas taking the mediant, which is very fun. Yeah, here non-divisi, not no divisi. Non-divisi. Okay. Oh, and then just you're throwing in the cello, playing that D there. Yeah. So all fun, all good. So yeah, so it's very bright, very chirping, very very neat way to deal with this. And then here, when it comes back, bars 9 to 12, the same idea. You're scoring it an octave lower in your strings. At least the octave lower on the B here, and the B octaves there. But you're leaving. You're sort of you're scoring the strings an octave lower, pretty much. Notice the return to the alto clef here for the violas, and we've got the same thing going on with oboes and English horn. So it's going to be a very very chesty sound here, very kind of people would say nasal, but I would say just like very reedy. It'll be a very reedy sound with this punch right here on the second beat every other bar. That's a very, very cool idea. To just bring it down an octave, and then have some barking horns like arf, arf, and bump, 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 bum. I love this trade-off from flutes, right in here. Now the thing about this is that like the flutes are going to add a little bit of weight to the second violins, but not much, right? Not really. It's almost negligible, right? And maybe you're giving this to the flutes because there's nobody else who could do it. But why couldn't the oboes just double the first first violin here instead of the flutes? But I mean, it's just barely works, and it's just not the strongest use of the flutes right in there. There are so many other instruments. Like clarinet, right, could be doubling this. It'd be twice as powerful. The clarinet right here would be twice as powerful as A2 flutes, right? Just a single clarinet, and it would give this a very, very cutting, sort of very, very emphatic sound. And in fact, I would want both of these voices to be doubled. See, because you're doing the same thing right in here, right? You've got these octaves going on with your horn. So if these octaves are going to be powerful, A2, trumpets and horn, then why can't this be more powerful? We'll say like maybe first clarinet doubling this, and maybe bass clarinet doubling this, right? So why can't we have more strength in there? Now, the horn scoring is a little weird. Like, this chord is a little disorganized. It should be the third player playing the C and the second player playing the A, right? So this should be an A fifth with a C below here. And then as far as this goes, dun dun dun, it's a very, very loud, in-your-face kind of playing right in here. and yet you have both of these pitches above the action. So yeah, it might be kind of fun to give this to the second and the fourth, and then have the first and the third play this A fifth above, right? So you just would have an E with this below in second voice, and then you'd have an A in the lower staff. You'd have an A with the below, or you could just give this to the second and fourth, and have the first and the third play this. That's actually probably what I would do. Is just to have it with the strongest players. And here you've got this interesting thing: straight mute, and then you go O, right? So using the O or the circle. That basically implies an open for a stopped horn, right? So don't use it. Like, you're just going to get raised hands in rehearsal, right? We want to avoid that. No raised hands in rehearsal. You're saying straight mute. Here, just say sends a sword, right? Or no mute, right? If you want to stay with English, so just say no mute. But don't say O, all right? That's a if you were you would say plus, and then you would say O, right? Or you'd have circle, plus and circle. Okay, so now let's take a look at that's sort of the A section, right? So A1 and A2. Now let's look at the B section, right? B1 and B2. So our concerns here are with the melodic development soaring quite high, to the uppermost orchestral register, the accompaniment figures covering a really wide range. Now, here you've got the clarinets just basically trading off, first going bo beep, bo beep, second going do dee do do do. So, could you just go second going bum bum bum, and then like to have the first go bum bum bum, so bum bum bum, second bum bum bum, first bum bum bum, and then second da da da, and then on the same note here da 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 by the first. I think that just works a whole lot better, right? Rather than just this kind of like, hey, you do it, then I'll do it. I think it's better to have them interacting all the way through, right? And just same thing here, right? There's no need to score it like this. And this is really, really fun in here. I think that the accompaniment is fairly strong. Yeah. If you're going to double the same pitch, have the same articulation and the same note length, right? So here, like, since this is essentially a sounding E, you should have an eighth note staccato, right? So it just matches the same thing here, and then of course the pizzicato here, so it doesn't extend too long, right? And then this is intended to be a sounding A, right? So staccato eighth note. So just make them match. And then I would say the same thing with this little note right in here. Make this an eighth note as well, the C as well as the F, written C and written F. Make them eighth notes. All right, and then as far as the accompaniment here, this is very cool. Bass clarinet and bassoons working together, and you've got the violas and your cellos. I feel that's all very nice. All right, so let's look at the accompaniment. Oh, sorry, the melody, right? So it's kind of strange the way you've got this doubling. You've got this ya da 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 dum, and then just flute answering ya dee 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 doo, and then da 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 dum, and then flutes dee 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 doo doo. Yeah, I mean, it's okay, it's fine. I mean, it's just so long as you really, really, really are comfortable with this being strong and then weak, right? I mean, it's weak and light, right? So, I almost feel like you should like write soli, right? Yeah, da 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 da, and then soli, ba 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 ba, and then da 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 soli, ya dee 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 dee. Right? And I think that just like works so that the players really know they're taking over on these last 5 notes of these bars. Like, there's just really, like, they are sticking out there. They're on their own, right? So that they really have to make it cut through, even though they had, they were just accompanied up the hill by the strings. Now they really have to make it count for themselves, right? They are the main voice, and the conductor is going to have to balance all this other stuff, right? They're going to really have to make sure that these pitches down here, in the middle winds, do not interfere with the flute family up here. Okay. So now, like looking at the treatment here, we've got flutes and octaves. Okay, and I mean, do you think you could find a stronger second voice here? So so the first flute is doing great all the way through these three bars, beautiful. But the second flute is barely adding anything to the tone weight here of the second violins. It would be better for you to have A2 flutes above and to have like anybody else, oboe, English horn, clarinet, somebody else in here to thicken up this line. Probably oboe. Like that just would. That way, you wouldn't basically change the timbral characteristic of these three bars at all. But you would and you would sort of maintain that sort of sense of drive and color and everything else. So I would say you could have either like A2 flutes and A2 oboes doubling this line, or you could just have one of each, right? That would probably be fine because it's like the A2 is just like a color, right? So like it's more than it is added strength, right? Now, admittedly, like A2 oboes have a kind of a trumpety sort of a sound to them, so that is a very much like a like strengthening it up in a certain way, but it also weakens it in another way in the terms of like the intimacy and the expressiveness. But like here, you're just basically you're thickening up the purpose is to thicken up the second violin, so it doesn't really matter, right? But the choosing the second flute here to play in sort of the middle register where it's very weak is not really going to help a whole lot, right? But this is really lovely, like the way that you trade off to to your piccolo and so on, and the way everybody just runs up the hill here to this very, very high E. So I have absolutely no problem with any of this, except for you probably noticed in the mock-up you can't really hear the glockenspiel, and that is what's going to happen. It's just it is so powerful here. Everybody just going up to this fortissimo and so on. Like, but what does the glockenspiel? What can it really add there, right? Just some icing, some doubling of the piccolo line, right? So I mean, if you're comfortable with that, just it kind of coloring the piccolo line without really adding very much, that's what you're going to get. That's what you have asked for. All right, but this is kind of fun right in here. Just this, sort of this little bass line added below. I don't know if you really need this, right? Because your melody is just running away with itself. Does it need to be paced from below? But if you want to add that in there, it's still fine. And this big punch right at the beginning from the heavy brass, really fun. All right, and then I just love this in here. Ba 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 ya da dun dun dun. So look, the way that you've scored this, I do not feel that your piccolo in its middle register is powerful enough to carry the top of this harmony all by itself. Okay. I mean, it's not completely alone because you've got you're doubling with clarinet and you've also got oboe on there, but then you're forcing the flute into like an internal position below the clarinet, the kind of pungent clarinet and first flute. So it's basically it's thickening this inner line. So I feel a more natural, it's just slightly the positioning of the winds right in here is just slightly unnatural, right? And it's not going to have the intonation is not going to be as dead on, and the color is possibly going to be not what you expect. Okay. So I mean, it might be better to have a first clarinet up there and a first flute doubling the piccolo here, and then the second flute can double first oboe play this internal part here, right? And then the second oboe double the English horn and the second clarinet. I would say that would be a more balanced way of approaching this. But this is really cool right in here. The trumpet, you know, it's just so fun right in there. Yeah, yeah. I like these little jibs and jabs right in here with the brass. And yeah, it's just doubling the strings too. Yeah, and then yeah, it's all really good in there. And this is kind of fun. You're sort of showing me how you're setting this up. So I would say like in all of like the ladder concerns in the criteria are pretty much you're just checking the boxes like upper middle register continuing on. There's a textural contrast that works really well. There's like a division in terms of the phrasing here, which is really just emphatically starts on the second beat here and has just that same grouping of the rhythm until the violins just run away with it here. And then you maintain this driving staccato, transition smoothly to the next passage. That all the boxes ticked, I feel. So going on to B, I kind of wish that you had made this bar like you just sort of made one big page out of A and then one big page out of B. It's just easier for me to evaluate. You know what I mean? It's okay to have like your pages run longer, right? Just so long as like it's just easier for me to lecture on. It's you don't really, if the page falls the way that it falls and you don't really have much control over it, don't worry. But if there's any way to make it easier on me, give it a try. So this is all cool right in here. The bass clarinet essentially doubling what's going on here in the between the cello and the viola and so on, and then trumpet in the middle. Pretty good start. Yeah, and all pretty much working together very nicely. And then okay, so one of my problems here is that in the piano score we have a trade-off of hands, right? We have the left hand playing these three notes, and then we have the right hand coming in, right? So why do we have to obviously the line is intended to be one continuous line. So why do we have to divide the hands? There are no hands, right? And why can't the horn come in a little earlier? Why can't the pizzicato and the cello continue forward and double what's going on? Why can't the bassoons run into the horn part? Why do we have to just really have, bassoon, 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 horn, 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 horn? It just like it is taking what was originally a fairly smooth trade-off between the hands in the piano part and kind of turning it into a more really obvious division between the two. Right, so maybe if there's some way of eliminating that division and just making it more about one continuous texture. And I mean, I can also see like you're thickening the bassoon with pizzicato, and then you feel like going forward you don't need to do that because you have horns a two soli. So a two soli, this will work with horns 1 and 2. That's totally fine if you want to do it that way. It would also be a good opportunity to bring in your third, because this is just that sort of kind of playing with flair, right? It's really. But I mean, but all the same, it's good either with 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. It works equally well. And I just really love the way that you pull the rug out from under here. You don't put any emphasis on the downbeat here. That. Bump, 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 bump. It you just really feel like the syncopated feeling right there of just kind of just almost like pulling to the left and then this coming in. And da, 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 da. I love the trombone in there and yeah, the way that all works. And then the little interjections of the little high notes and chords and so on. And that little E third in here, it doesn't feel too unnatural. So, props for that. I think that works really, really good. And then here, like you have this continuous, bum, 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 bum. This should be one single beam, right? Like just because there were two, like there was a beam for the left hand and a beam for the right hand. If it's all one instrument, this looks like triplets, right? So look, make it one continuous beam. Okay, now here we're running into a mistake that I put into one of the templates, right? And that is to have B flat here. So apologies. That was just that was a slip of the finger that I didn't catch on the proofing. So yeah, so this should be a B natural. But the thing that is more important, what it really should be, is like this should be second voice, this should be the second bassoon. The first bassoon should run down into this triplet because that's the way that this ends. That's if you listen to the piano part, that's absolutely what both pianists that I recommend listening to do. Like the end of this little peppy staccato line is really to end on the triplet, and then the B natural, sorry, not B flat, that comes in is the emerging melodic line, which is a separate thing, right? B dun dun dun. So, but insofar as I have set up some or have listed some evaluation criteria here, maintaining differentiated roles and closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, highlighting inner voices, keeping the interjecting notes from sounding too glaringly repetitive. I feel that you ticked all those boxes really nicely, right? So then moving forwards into this next part of the section B, we have the concern of keeping the triplets from overwhelming the melodic line, right? And then interpreting the widely reaching left-hand patterns. So I think the patterns are cool. I don't think you need to do this. Like, I don't think you need to go bum 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 bum. I don't think you need to. I mean, maybe in the cellos, but do you need to do that in the bassoon part, right? I feel like this upper note is sort of subtracting from the lower notes. I think if you leave it out and let the tuba note, right, or maybe a timpani note, like, I think that's all you need. I think by stacking your third bassoon, tuba, and cellos on that same exact note, we're kind of taking away from this beautiful low E, right? The sense of E, right, is really kind of we're really hearing more E with with just a little bit of footing to it, right? Like a kind of a little bit more foundation. So I would say just leave it in the tuba, take away these other notes, and I think that you just really will hear that lower E stand out suddenly. I mean, for that matter, you could have your third bassoon player playing contrabassoon, right? And then you get doubling on this low E, just natural. It's just like part of it's very easy to note for the contrabassoon player to play. Now, I will just count it down to carelessness that you've left out the slurs here. I'm just hoping you do not intentionally mean to go da 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 da, right? And that you really do intend to go ta 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 ta, right? That's really what's needed. Same thing with the violas. I just feel like da 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 is just a little too frisky. All right, but I mean, as it is scored, it's very, very cool. And then I love this leaping up, and then you're taking it up to the next octave, and you're doubling with the oboe, and I think that will work really, really nicely. Okay, just so long as you do not pull too much strength out of your melody line, right? Where are we going with this melody? Bum, bum. Then you add A2, that's fine. Da, 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 dum. And then right in here, we're coming in an octave higher with a trumpet. Yeah, and then dropping an octave. Ba, 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 da, da, da. Yeah, so this is so cool. So this ticks a bunch of boxes, right? Like, not only do the triplets not overwhelm the melodic line, right? But you're also keeping your textural contours fresh and not too much the same, right? So you really do trade things around. I love the way you got the tuba down here, and you got bass trombone, and back to tuba, and so on. it's just, and then the triplets are changing places, and the melody jumps up an octave and then back down and so on. I just think there's just so many things that work about this. So just, very, very nice work. Now here, do you really mean to go stop? Or do you want it to go right? So do you want there to be sustain here into this? So I think what you need to do is go to just have it. You'd even do this with ties, like tie this and then tie this to a half note, and then have an incomplete tie coming after it, right? I really prefer my incomplete ties, like especially in concert music, to just really kind of cover more ground, right? Rather than that sort of wimpy little incomplete tie that, just goes about, a millimeter past the note. I think it just is just more expansive, you know what I mean? Just so you could just tie all of the notes, and you could tie this to a half note, and then you'd have that sustain, and then it'll just be, letting it vibrate with the tie reaching across to the next bar. Okay, so great work on section B. And then you're bringing everything way, way, way down here. Now what we need in order for the harp to come through beautifully is just for the people who are finishing up their parts in here to know how soft they're getting, right? So you're saying piano and the tuba and so on. And here we've got forte, crescendo, diminuendo to what? So it's like, I'd say like put, triple P or double P here, right? And then here you're going down to piano. So yeah, so the same thing here. What does this end up being? Pianissimo. This doesn't quite make sense. Piano diminuendo to piano. All right, so maybe you left out a crescendo in here, and in here. Anyway, so maybe need a little bit of work on those, on the dynamics in there. Okay, but whatever has to happen, this has to end up very, very soft in here. And then if you really want this harp solo to work beautifully. And what I would do is I would just make it really clear to the harpist that they do not have to damp any notes. So right in here, this should tie to a quarter note of the same pitch, right? So that just like the player, just really realizes that this is all one kind of, it's just basically a very slow arpeggio. And they don't need to think about like this being kind of crisp or not sustaining or anything, right? So just really make sure that it, that there's the definite sense of sustaining all the way through, and then you have this beautiful roll here at the end. It's very, very nice. And that just takes us to this lovely oboe solo. So here we're going to our next set of evaluation criteria, and I would say convincing allargando expansion, smooth release into bar 49. If all you've got here is harp plus a little bit of low strings and winds, then I think it's fine. I think you can add a little bit of crescendo here, then maybe like crescendo diminuendo, I think would work. And then same thing for this low E, or you could just leave it piano. But like with these other parts, I think it needs to sort of push a little bit at the harp from below, but not very much. All right, so the next issue here is careful treatment of the melodic voice to make it feel authentic to the composer's style. I feel that you do that, okay? Keeping the accompaniment pattern from becoming too regular and therefore too predictable. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just sort of see what you do here. So you got this held B flat here, and then you've got these, it's very, very, very cool. Yeah. Doppio più lento ma sempre mosso, right? So you don't really give us a any kind of tempo mark here, but so long as it doesn't get too fast, then you can tremolo each of these pitches, right? Without it just really being a measured tremolo, being, in which case you only want one tremolo beam, not two, right? So you want the regular beam and the tremolo beam. So if you just really want this to be, so it goes really fast, you're only able to really go, you can't really go, you see what I mean? Like the real sense of the just beautiful unmeasured tremolo is only possible with a slower tempo there. Okay, so yeah. So here you're not really having the harp. You've got the harp, but you're not really playing an arpeggiated pattern. You're just kind of having a more kind of static pattern. But when we turn the page, we can kind of see that you're pretty much holding on to that, right? There isn't any differentiation. It just kind of does the same thing for 8 or 9 bars, and that's fine. That does not have to change around or anything. But it's just something like, are you happy with that approach? Could you have changed octaves? Could you have introduced a new element? Could you have progressed the texture? Is there something else that you could have done there rather than just make it all about the solo voice? And then one last issue about the solo voice, and that is that I'm really happy to see that you are adding nuances. It's so important. Here you have solo piano, and it plays beautifully over everything else playing piano. It's just very, very clear, and part of that is because of the nuances pushing and pulling, right? So, could this be portato, though? Could you put a slur over it, and then you have that sort of pulsing kind of sobbing sound? Diminuendo. And this is lovely. And this would go beautiful with portato if it were clarinet. I love this sounding B flat coming in here with the second. I think in this case you really do need to have you should maintain the two separate voices. Have the have bar rests in first voice here, and the tie from the bottom. It's just clearer. Yeah, and it's really beautiful the way that you scored this. You can, and then you have like the nuances above, and then here you've got the flute taking over. Ba 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 da 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 ba ba dum and oboe. Okay, so my only question here is, why do we have this emptiness on the first beat here? What is going on in the piano score? Right, it is. Bum 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 bum, and then bum ba da da do dee do dee dee. So why can't we have the full effect here? And why can't we have the staccato in here? Right? I mean, what is going on here emotionally? It is suspended, anxious, nervous energy, right? And it is being held back. This it's just like, it's just right on the edge here, and you have this declamation, this beautiful song above it, but there's this tense energy below. So when you take out, when you just drop the rhythm right in here, we don't have that sense of a setup, right? And we don't have the continuing energy, and it can't slightly start to burst out, right? So just really don't take away the accompaniment from there. Just leave it in, right? Just if there's something that you could do. I mean, I realize, you just want this oboe to be completely all by itself, and then you want the accompaniment to come back in and then push into the next bar. But I just feel like we're losing the sense of momentum here. And also, like, if you can just score it in staccato, right, and make it more ferocious, then you get that, and then it's just really, like, from there, it's really obvious what to do with our energy, right? It just really comes out very, very easily. Yeah. Now, could this be instead of bum bum, could this be a slur? Ba, right? You know what I mean? Just like really pushing up. Sorry for my tuneless singing. All right, and then that leads to flutes. A2, right? Doubling first violins. And you could throw in some portato here too. Both parts. And this is lovely. Okay, and how about don't throw in the accelerando yet? Leave this out. Go poco animato here instead, right? Just let this be slow. Where's the slur here? Lift it out, right? Just, yeah, I love that. Adding the sort of the piccolo above. And then poco animato as as you have this sort of accompaniment, do 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 kind of stuff going on, and then ba 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 da 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 dum, ba 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 ba. So like if you just really, I think that okay. So I think the problem here is that just dropping out and dropping out is we can hear the sudden absence of the instrument, right? So unless you go diminuendo, so that the sound of this instrument sort of dies off inside the merged sound, and then the same thing here. This goes diminuendo, so this dies off inside the sound of the violin. So unless you do that, then you just really we just really hear a sudden drop off in the intensity of the line, and then the same thing happens here. So I think you need to ease out with some hairpins, right? And then this needs to just stay very, very strong and emphatic. Okay, the only thing that I feel in here, I'm seeing some scores where, there's just a sense of sweep and intensity and just joyous abandon right in here is sort of, it's not really fulfilling itself as much, right? Like, and instead of like a big full orchestra coming up to just surge underneath this line, we kind of have the little arpeggio from the harp, right? I feel there's so much more you could be doing this, like, and it's not. See, I'm not trying to say you should do this because I think you should do this. I'm saying you should do this because of the way you set everything up, right? You just have this beautiful texture, this beautiful, you're starting to add some support from the trumpets, and we've got this. You have some of the harmony from before and everything else, and it just that sort of fades away, right? When you get to this triumphant section, why can't we intensify here and and just really fulfill the energy and the meaning of the line, and then pull back, and then have the harp come in. Bum 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 ba-da-dum. Don't even bother with the retardando. Let the lines, the rubato, do the work, right? Da-da-dum, bum 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 bum. Little bit of a fermata like I had in the template, and then bum 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 da-da-dum, bum bum bee ba 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 ba. More of a fermata, and ya dun 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 dun. There's actually an animato there, isn't there? Dun dun dun. At least how it's played in the piano, right? So I mean, do you really want it to go dun 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 dun? That's a different kind of drama, right? It isn't kind of an intensifying, pushing drama. It's just more like, I am really making this point. Dun 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 dun. Okay, so I feel like poco affrettando, you can't accelerate from your ritardando. I don't think you can start from a slow tempo here. I think you have to start, affrettando. What does that mean? It's almost like saying agitato, right? So it's just like you want things to be like very very nervous and bouncy and rushed and just just like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm just I am trying to get this done, and then right. So we just have that same intense energy that I'm trying to have people bring out right in here. But it just and it really sort of pulls down. So I don't think there's any need for you to flex on the tempo at all here. Just write maybe a little bit of ritardando right at the end if you want to. But I think it all works fine. So just a little ritardando, like maybe like on the last 2 beats, or even on the last 1 beat. Stretch it out a little bit. And then the agitato has to just really be fast. And then here's like where I would say, I don't think there is any way for you to really do, I don't think you can have that unmeasured tremolo. I think it has to be, a measured tremolo in 16th notes, right? So, like, because it's just, how many shakes of the bow can you get off of each beat? And especially poco accelerando, right? You're pushing even more. So I think that the best you can hope for would be a single beam tremolo, not a double beam tremolo. So the double beam tremolo plus the 8th beam equals unmeasured tremolo, right? So it's three beams, right? The beam on top plus the 2 tremolo beams. So I think the fastest you can expect to go here is the measured tremolo of 16th notes, right? And if that's true, then this note right here should be expressed as a quarter note with with just a stem, no beam, and the double tremolo beam on it, and then just go back to single tremolo beams under a connecting 8th beam. So yeah. But this is all real fun right in here. This lovely tension right in here, and just adding certain notes as you go to the accelerando and so on, and then a ritardando. I would say molto ritardando here. And this is not okay. So like with the glissando, I would add a dotted half note, right? So like the dotted half note value is telling you like how long is the glissando going to take up, right? Obviously, that single note below is not going to necessarily last a dotted half note's worth. It's not the point, but it's the value of all the other notes on the way to the destination note, right? So I really don't. I prefer to not have this. This is coming more into vogue, and I feel that it's not the greatest approach. Just to have a note and then followed by rests, right? But a glissando line. Just write in the dotted half note here. But I would say give yourself more glissando notes. So, could you go up to D an octave higher, right? And then you'd have another octave of notes to glissando over. Could you go down to B an octave lower? Then you have 2 more octaves of glissando. So like the more strings that you can glissando across, the better it sounds. The slower the glissando, and the less convincing it is. The more if the slower the glissando notes, the more it has to compete with all these other notes being played furiously by the other players, right? So the faster the glissando, the bigger the sweep, and the more convincing it is. Okay, so now we're getting to this point right in here, and yeah, so you're following my lead in here, 132, Piumeno, Poco Rubato. Exactly right. Now you're throwing in accelerando in here, so all right. I mean, that's fine if you feel that accelerando then ritardando. That's totally up to you. But I kind of like the whole sense of the party just being intoxicating, right? Have you ever been at a party where like you didn't drink, you didn't smoke anything funny, and you were totally straight, but the energy of the party was just, took you to another place mentally. Just whether it was the dancing or the music or just the lovely experience of being with all those other people, and and just meeting new people with new perspectives, and and staying up late and just all the other things, that's just added up to this almost overwhelming sense of, just having your reality turned inside out. Well, that is, I feel, the funnest way to enjoy a party. And the I think that that's somewhat something of what's being expressed here. Just it's almost like the music is starting to reel and the room is starting to melt, and the colors are starting to mix together, and just this kind of crazy haze, right? So what I would say, like, how does that relate to the accelerando is, like, I don't think you need it in there, right? I think that it just, I think that the music is doing the work for you. That I think that, like, if you say più meno a poco rubato, then that lets the conductor make all these decisions, like the accelerando and the ritardando and so on. So, like, they can just make the beat sort of flex a little bit, right? Almost like flexing the beat, poco rubato. That happens all the time. Like, everybody has heard very expressively generous versions of, say, like Chopin's Fourth Prelude, right, in E minor, right, or maybe somewhat morbidly played interpretations of Ravel's Pavane for a Dead Princess, right? So, like, lots of rubato. So that's possible with an orchestra. If once the conductor lays out a certain kind of pattern of flexing, then that just happens, right? And so if you just if you make it really easy for them, then they can make those decisions, and it can make the score a lot stronger, right? So I just feel that that's setting that up right in here is what's important, just with the the choices, the color choices, and the way that parts lead into each other. And you're already doing that. Like, it's already really strong here, Giorgos. You don't really need to, I don't think you need to finesse the tempo so much. So yeah, so this is all really cool. So just so long as this isn't too fast, then I think you can get away with this. Da 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 da. Right, but see, like, when you push on the accelerando, it becomes harder and harder for your first bassoonist to go da 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 da, because they can't go. Some bassoonists can double tongue, but it's not like a lot of bassoonists can double tongue, but they don't like doing it because they don't feel that that's very precise, right? It just sort of has a kind of like a slight thumpity sound on the alternating notes, whereas that's not a problem for flute players because they're using their tongue in a different way. They're practically spitting the notes out between their lips, right? As opposed to the just the very tight control that that double reed players have got. So yeah, so I would say, like, that's another problem right in there for the accelerando. But I mean, look, you've done all this really great work here. That you've got your trumpets and octaves right in here, and it's kind of strange though. Like, you start to, like, here you're adding this octave above. Why are we subtracting the trumpet below, right? So I guess you're sort of making the color sort of stand out higher. But I think that what you should do instead of that is just allow it to fill out, right? Don't subtract anything, just add things above and make them more secure as you get higher, right? And then, you just have this, you're sort of heading into this overwhelming sense of completion, right? Sending to here, but you're sort of taking out the center of it, right? So I think it's okay to leave in the role of the third trumpet in here. I think that's totally fine. They can go all the way down to this F sharp with no problem if you need them to, an octave lower. Yeah, and then here with expansion, right? So here's another point. Like, you are already doing that in the scoring. You don't need to tell people to expand. They are expanded, right? Their minds are expanded. They're expanded. So they these are notes for the orchestrator. Like, a lot of these things, like, let me pull back here a little bit. Like, you probably remember that, like, here at the beginning of C, like it says, bien chantant and so on, like, well sung and so on. So like you already showed us that with your hairpins and your beautiful treatment of the melody. So those are, those are features that are just really more notes for the orchestrator, right? Or for the conductor. So don't worry about that. And there's some cool stuff in here. You're going da 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 da. Yeah, and like sort of changing where this all falls is also very, very, very cool. And then like dropping out right in here. Yeah, it's just so that the horns can like just suddenly appear and then coming right back in. It's such a fun idea. So this is like a dropout that I understand. Right, there are some that I don't, but this one I understand because you just suddenly want that brass color to leap out. I think that you could probably bring the brass up in volume though, right? You've got this massive surge right here, so you have this, big, huge scoring. So I would say jump up to fortissimo here, right? And then when the orchestra answers, drop back down to forte. Yeah, it's okay. Just let the brass scream out for a second. Yeah, and then here you're bringing everything together so beautifully, right? See, this is kind of what I want back here, right? Just like without taking out the center, like you're adding things on top, don't take your center out, right? So the same thing here, like just so beautifully set up together, and once again ticking a lot of boxes of how this should all work. Bum 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 bum. Okay, and then agitato. So end everything like this. End this phrase on the downbeat on eighth notes. All right, in every part. Every part gets an accented eighth note on the downbeat, and then the agitato starts on the beat 1.5, right? And then throw in a comma, a pausa, apostrophe, however you want to think about it. Throw in the little comma mark, and then right after it is the agitato, and then you've got your doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle. Right, and I would say like don't push it too fast, right? If you're doing this, da, 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 right? If you're having this player and this player, or these players, the second violinist play in between the beat, it is possible, but just so long as you don't go too fast, because you're really asking them to play off the 16th note, and it is barely going to sound clean and clear. Like, the thing that's really cool about this in the piano part is just how precise it is. The real precision of that rotating pattern. Is there some way that you could divide up the way that this works between the two violin parts? So you have like one of them going da 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 da, and the other going da 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 da. Could you do that instead of this, maybe? Just to make sure that you don't fall off of the beat. That these players don't like fall. They like you want these C's and F sharps to fall right in between these A's here, right? So maybe you could pattern it, right? So that you have, you're going ACA, ACA, ACA. And then the other part is going A, F sharp, A, F sharp, A, F sharp, A. And you're just going back in between it. Then I think that you just continue to have the violas in there, the way that they're written. And then I think you can do the same thing of like English horn trading off, perhaps trading off with a clarinet. I wouldn't bring the oboe into it. I think you'd end up going too low. But I mean, maybe there's a way of, it's just like the slowing down to C and it's from F sharp and so on. It's kind of icky. So I would say trading off between English horn and clarinet, right? Sort of doubling some of this right in here. I think that would work better than having the player going you know, like right in between, trying to find the exact spot in between the eighth notes is just weird, right? It's right. And then here, look, just have it all staccatissimo. All right, don't mix and match, because it's essentially like it's almost the same thing, right? The staccatissimo and the accented staccato, right? That it's just very, very. I mean, they are different, right? So this is a punchy staccato, but this is like a very, very precise, you know, just almost slightly robbed slightly more of its notation value. And then, you know, going at this speed, I think that you're going to just, once again, it just has to be measured tremolo in 16th notes, not unmeasured tremolo in 32nd notes. So a single tremolo beam under an adjoining eighth beam. And then, you know, the same thing right in here. You know, just have reshape this so it's da-da-da, da-da-da, and the other player going da-da-da, da-da-da. So you get altogether, you get the rotating pattern of da-da-da, 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 just easily going between the two instruments. And, you know, same thing here, just like throw in maybe violas working with second violins on that, or just back to the two violin groups. Yeah, so I just think it's weird to go, you know, dun, 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 make them all staccatissimos. Where you should let up, I think, is right in here. Oh, and this is also very difficult to go this da 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 da. You know, like you kind of want that All right, so I just think it's even ritardando plus an extra slowing down. It's just a little tricky. And then right in here, is there a way of smoothly connecting this? Do you know what I mean? Is there a way of like smoothing this out so that it just naturally, beautifully leads into... I mean, look, you've got harp in here already. Is there some way that the harp could come and interlace with this right in here and take over and just beautifully, smoothly hand over this to the next section? All right, so that leads to this part right in here. And I have to say, I really love the way that you scored out the melody in here. It's just so nice. Da, 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 da. I love the nuances here. Solo oboe. Da, da. And then answered by clarinet. Boo, da. Answering by flute, da, da, and then back to oboe, da, da, and just wonderful octave violins in here. Da, da. This is actually my bad. I'm looking at this in the template score, and I'm noticing that like I was being a little careless. This should have been a 32nd note triplet rather than a 16th note triplet, and that's why it's sort of dividing the beats here. So I just caught this. So apologies for that. The other mistake in the template was the B flat instead of the B natural back in the second section of the piece. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so all that aside, I really love the support here by the harp. It's so gorgeous. All right. One thing that I'm not quite so sold on, though, is this, you know, dividing up the rotating pattern between two different voices without any other instrument kind of doing an interlacing rotating pattern on top of it. The problem is that you just get this da 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 da, or you know, da 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 da. So these longer notes, they're sort of like, it's kind of like, you know, Scotch tape sort of being visible on an art project where you're sort of tying things together, and the Scotch tape becomes more visible than the color of the paint underneath it on the craft project that you're working on, right? So I just sort of feel that is kind of at work here. If there was some way to bring in like two interlocking instruments playing rotating patterns on top of each other. One of them going, like da da dum, da da dum, da da dum, and the other one da 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 da. That might be like a better way of doing an interlocking kind of a thing, and then yeah, just leave the strings the way they are, but just have that rotating pattern in a wind instrument over it. Then I think that you would just get a much smoother sound right there, and you wouldn't notice the da 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 kind of notes that are tying and holding longer, right? Which I think it just distracts from the beauty of the line that it's accompanying. But this is just so gorgeous. I mean, it's like, this is like like a couple of bars from some great ballet by Delibes, right, or by Tchaikovsky or something. It just really feels so natural, so beautiful, so simple. Da 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 da. And then you bring in the trumpet. Bum, 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 da 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 da. Yeah. And then once again, I just really feel like a rotating pattern would be better rather than doubling the same exact part in both of these different instruments. And then clarinet. Da, 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 da. So while these are available as real easy natural harmonics, this one has to be an artificial harmonic. So it's probably better just to score this, to stay in alto clef and just score it as like the touch 4 harmonic, right? So just score it as E, the lowest E possible, with and then a diamond head note on the A, and then I'll make this one a harmonic as well, just so that it's easy. The player can just go E E E E F, right? Okay, so I'm getting a little distracted from a point I was trying to make, and that was, if these are all going to be harmonics, then maybe just make the whole thing non-vibrato and make this non-vibrato, and then you get that beautiful distant sound, right? Which is indicated by the composer, right? So just really want that sense of looking back across the beautiful landscape of which you've traveled with your favorite person, right, in the perfumed air, and it's beautiful, and it's night, and the moonlight is out, and it's shining down on the place where you were, and where you were just having this wonderful party. And you can see that it's continuing on, but it's bathed in moonlight, so it's sort of slightly hallucinatory. All right. And now, bum, ba-da-da-dum. Very nice. You're coming back. You're from distance to intimacy to suspense. All right. It would be really nice if these lines could connect. D da 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 dum. Because that's just rather than D and then some other instrument da 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 dum. Maybe this could slur or just play, just like dovetail with a single note into the bassoon part. Or maybe the bassoonist could dovetail on this last note or something. I just wish that these lines could connect, right? Rather than just being really separate, like da 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 da. You see, it's almost like, it is. It's not almost like anything. It is two different singers singing two different lines, or it's a chorus. You've got your chorus of cello players thickened by bass clarinet, and then suddenly the solo bassoon voice, right? All right. See, here, I would tell the second bassoonist to take over here, and then have the first bassoon come in to do this. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum. In fact, have this played by the third bassoonist. I keep forgetting that we've got a third bassoonist as opposed to a contrabassoon player. So, have your third bassoonist play this, and then first and second, and make sure that they're slurred, right? Da da dum, da da, right? Rather than ta ta, right? When you leave the slur out, it's ta-ta, right? It's not dum. The same thing here, like slurs, right? Slur, slur. You got a slur here, there's slurs everywhere. Kind of interesting, though, the pizzicato. Pluck, pluck, pluck. Pluck, pluck, pluck. Cool. All right, so other than that, really no problems here. I love the harp. I think that works very well. Okay, so now we're getting to this part right in here. Bum-bum. The pianist, when a pianist plays this, they're going to hold their foot down on the pedal, and it's going to last until here. That means that these pitches are going to continue sustaining. So I would say continue to sustain. All right. No problems here in the second flute part because there's very light accompaniment by everybody else, right? So da da bum, but we keep going down below here at quadruple piano. Okay, so here's a way of thinking of very, very soft dynamics, all right? So pianissimo is extra soft, okay? Piano pianissimo is as soft as you can play musically, all right? Now, a quadruple piano is as soft as you can play non-musically, right? So it's to the point where the sound of the breath going through the instrument or the sound of the bow going across the strings is actually louder than the sound of the pitch, right? So that's what I would say is non-musical, right? So then 5, like quintuple piano, would be just basically so soft that you're basically just almost not even making a noise at all, right? Whereas if you think about the reverse, fortissimo is extra loud. Forte fortissimo, three triple F, is as loud as you can play musically. And then quadruple F is as loud as you can play non-musically, right? And then quintuple F is just basically, you're just playing your music, your instrument so loud that it's just basically, it is not even making any kind of sense, right? So maybe you don't need to go down to triple P until here, right? What if you were to start off mezzo piano, right? And then went down to piano here, and then went down to pianissimo here, and then went down to triple P here. I think that would be a better way to end. You just have more color, right? Like, here's the problem with getting too soft. The softer you get, the less color, right? That's one of the problems, right? Like, that's part of the phenomenon of non-vibrato, right? Like, what does vibrato do, right? Well, it makes things like very emotional, or it makes things sort of feel more lively and so on. But what does it really do? It helps the sound wave reach your ear better, right? It helps what it is to sort of project. It complicates it. It does something to it which moves it through the air, I feel, with just, a little bit more just a more force, being more genuine, okay? So when you take that out, right, things feel more distant, okay? And they're less colorful, right? When you're sort of taking some of the color out, when you take the vibrato out. Now, there are instruments that play with like really slow vibrato that, like, technically there is vibrato in the tone, but we think of them as non-vibrato instruments, and that would be like clarinet and horn and brass instruments and so on, like concert brass. So, but their tone is already so warm and so complex that that isn't like the sense of being distant and the sense of being colorless. That's not a question. However, like when we start to get really, 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 really soft, we really are kind of taking the color out more and more of the instruments, right? So that's the problem with going down to like quadruple piano in my sense, right? Now, you may have a completely different idea of how dynamics work, but this is generally what I've observed in concert play, or like whether anybody is thinking about this rationally or not, right, in the orchestra, or whether they just like they say like they think, okay, pianissimo, I'll play pianissimo, and then they say, oh, there's a triple P and then there's a quadruple P. Well, I'll just play a little softer than pianissimo, and then I'll just play a little softer than that, right? But they really have not changed all that much. So if that's your conception, that's a lot like Tchaikovsky, right? Trying to get his bassoonist to play softer and softer so they can really do that at the end of that passage in the Pathétique, right? So that is a different way of thinking of extreme dynamics. So I think I'm just going to turn this into an orchestration tip, right? How to think about extreme dynamics. But in the meantime, it's just something like I just want your score to succeed, right? Because there's so many cool things about it. I'm just getting so enthused by looking at these last 6 scores. I just really feel I'm on this big roll, and I'm just getting more and more excited as I'm getting towards like the very last scores because they are exciting me with their quality and their craft and their imagination and all that other stuff. So if any of my suggestions are useful to you, Giorgos, in getting your score ready to be read by a conductor, or even just like if all the suggestions that I've made for making the score stronger are things that you can use in your own work that have nothing to do with this piece, maybe that's even better or more realistic to think about, then great. I would be honored if that were something that was useful to you. But you are doing me the honor, I think, of working so hard on this score and bringing it to me for me to look at, and just so much hard work into this and so much sincerity. You can just see it in every bar, and also the way that you are supporting this channel so that I can share resources with thousands of other musicians out there. That daily act of altruism by several hundred composers out there supporting on Patreon, that is something I will never stop being amazed and thankful for. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Giorgos. Thank you for all of the support there from my Patreon crowd. Thanks to all of the website subscribers and viewers of this channel. And especially if you've stuck with me this long through this video, that's amazing. I really appreciate all the comments and the likes and the shares and just everything that everybody is doing in this orchestration challenge to connect to each other and to give each other feedback, and even if it's just a little compliment, just saying like, hey, I really love the way that the tuba came in there, or there was a timpani right at bar such and such, or wow, wasn't that beautiful the way that the harp played when the strings were doing the octaves, things like that. I think it just really it makes us a stronger community when we know that we're listening to each other's works and we're helping each other get better. And that's something that I will also never get tired of. So thanks one and all. And now I am just on a roll here. I'm going to go evaluate another score. See you all soon.